Hello everyone, welcome to a quick gaming news vlog style of video. These types of videos are not all that common on this channel because typically in the world of shmups and arcade games, there isn't a whole lot of news that warrants me doing a video about it or generates enough interest that people would tune in and listen. But I think today's case is an exception because before I went to bed last night, I had a bunch of people messaging me about this announcement where Cave is planning on doing a game with the Touhou franchise, and funnily enough, this was all right before I went to sleep, so I got these messages, fell asleep, dreamed about it, woke up, and thought, was that all just a dream? And then I looked at my phone and was like, oh wait, no, these are real messages, this is really happening. And so I'll admit, for a while there, I was pretty hyped about it, and I was already fantasizing about what this game would look like, where, oh my gosh, now Touhou games are going to have ground enemies that are going in and they're going to rework the bullets, they're going to rework the character models, they're going to bring in actual real Cave style level design and scoring systems, and the boss fights are going to be epic, and there's going to be TLBs and references, and I was getting all excited about the possibilities this game presented. But rather than running to my camera and making one of those oh my gosh hype videos, which probably would have generated a good amount of interest, I thought, well, that's fun at the time, but then it gets to be kind of embarrassing years later when you look back on it. So I thought, why don't I take a step back and really think about what this project is likely to be. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, I've got some concerns here. And the reason for that is I think when people are imagining, like myself, this game where Cave is making a Touhou game, we're all, of course, imagining our favorite Cave games like Esperade or Mushimi-sama or Dodonpachi or Ketsui, and thinking of a more typical style shmup. But over the past few years, of course, Cave has kind of abandoned making those style of shmups and instead have been focusing all their time and effort outside of a few ports here and there with this gacha game they have on mobile that is very, very popular, and much more popular, I think, financially than what they've done before. And I do know that some shmup fans are a fan of this project. Jamers is a big fan of it. He actually sat me down and showed me how to set it up in BlueStacks, and so at some point I'm actually going to probably review this mobile game via BlueStacks. And so upon further reflection, I think if you really take a step back, it's pretty obvious that this game is very, very likely not going to be a traditional shmup. It is unlikely to come to consoles and be, a Cave reinterpretation of Touhou, which would be really cool, especially since it's kind of full circle because Touhou is based upon Cave. I remember if you go back and read some of the notes on the earlier Touhou games, Zun specifically says certain things were inspired by Cave and Hibachi and Dodonpachi and all this sort of stuff. So it's funny how it's kind of come full circle where Touhou began as sort of inspired by Cave, and then later on Cave comes back around and is making a game inspired by Touhou. But I think what we're going to see that is very likely is we're going to see a Touhou style gacha game very similar to the Cave one they have going, and I think the elements all line up for that to make sense. One, Touhou is an incredibly popular IP with innumerable amounts of characters that people could collect and play gacha games for. And then of course it has an absolute tome of lore that no one can fully understand, and so that would work really well in this gacha sort of format. And so when you take a step back and you look at all the pieces financially as well as where Cave's headspace is, it would make so much sense for them to go with a gacha style mobile game with Touhou rather than making a full-on arcade style shmup with Touhou influence, which would be of course my preferred outcome, but I don't think that's very likely. And that's why I'm kind of not as optimistic as some of my fellow players as far as what this project is going to look like. I guess there is some silver linings though. One, I think if Cave does make this, it'll probably make them a ton of money because Touhou as a brand is probably more popular than Cave, I would say, much more widely recognized. I could see it having even stronger cross appeal than the Cave games, and so I could see them making piles and piles of money, especially since their quality of gameplay is so high. And if you're a fan of mobile shmups, I think this is pretty exciting. But like myself, if you prefer to play them on console or on PC and you prefer the more traditional style of shmup, I don't think this is something to get too excited for. I guess we'll see. I don't necessarily want to be the person that's the wet blanket and everything, but I think what can end up happening is I noticed this with R-Type Final 2, and this is why I was kind of inspired to make this video, is when that game was initially announced on Kickstarter, I considered making a video about it and my thoughts on the Kickstarter, which were I think this will be alright, but I don't think it's going to be that quality, and I don't think it's going to be the true return of R-Type that many people are imagining. And looking back, I sort of wish I made that video because no one put out anything at least questioning the hype. And so in this case, while I would be very happy to be wrong, and I'd be very happy to see a full-on cave game with Touhou characters in it, which would be like Mushihime-sama on crack or something like that, I think what we're going to see instead is a mobile gacha style shmup very similar to the one Cave is working on now and is apparently making lots of money from. So it's always difficult for me to be too critical of Cave's direction these days, because while I love what they did in the past, a lot of the business side of things they did in the past make absolutely no sense, such as they'd make special versions of games but then release them on very limited PCBs that don't really get to be enjoyed all that much, and yet they probably put tons of staff work and research into it. Campaign version again, where they make a whole new version of Dodonpachi and release it just to contest winners. I think Cave in the past is the coolest, most awesome studio of all time, but business-wise, I don't think they made a lot of savvy decisions, and so I think at least being able to stay around in the mobile market is better than them disappearing altogether. So again, I don't try to be too negative to what Cave is up to these days, because I think making this Touhou gacha game, while I'm not personally interested in it, and I don't think many shmup fans will be all that interested in it, will bring them a pile of money, and hopefully with that pile of money they will be able to at least be a little bit more lenient and maybe start bringing out stuff that we'll be looking to enjoy. And if you're a fan of Touhou and you're into the lore and all that sort of stuff, I think this is going to be right up your alley. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Adios.